Hello, hello! I'm Kiriana and welcome to my video. Today I'm going to be talking about JRR Tolkien's brand new book, The Fall of Gondolin. It's edited by his son Christopher Tolkien because JRR Tolkien, in case you don't know, has passed away. And it's illustrated by Alan Lee, the great and wonderful, who also worked on the Lord of the Rings films. And even just looking at this, you can see, ooh, what could be happening here? Beautiful cover throughout the book. It is just gorgeous, full of these incredible illustrations, like this one right here, Alan Lee's traditional watercolor style, as well as some pencil sketches too, and full color map at the end, lists of family trees, all sorts of additional information, which, of course, it's Tolkien. We have to have our appendices. So, gorgeous book, but what is it? Well, The Fall of Gondolin tells the story of the hidden elven city of Gondolin from prior to The Lord of the Rings. So this is in the prequel material found in the Silmarillion. So The Fall of Gondolin, Gondolin is a hidden city that's tucked away in this ring of mountains, and the elves are escaping the wrath of Morgoth, who is currently in control of the vast majority of Middle-earth. However, Tolkien wrote this story in various fragments throughout his life. He did not write it as one massive narrative. So let's take a look here at the table of contents. Okay, so if we're taking a look, you will see that first item there is the original tale, but further down there's also the last version, and those two are the longest versions of the same story. So throughout you'll see the Fall of Gondolin happen, and then happen in a slightly different way, and then happen again in a really short paragraph, and then here's another long version. So throughout his life you'll see the different developments that he makes, and taking into account other characters that pop up along the way. Now this is one of the earliest stories that Tolkien conceived, in a sense, in that it stemmed from some of the original kernels of Middle-earth mythology. So there is something very interesting and fundamental about reading this particular book as being very close to the core, something that he kept returning to and kept developing throughout his lifetime. But at the same time, it is unfinished. So if you hate reading "and my father did not finish this work" or something along those lines, then you might be slightly disappointed in some of the chapters of this book. So personally, I love seeing this process of development. I think it's amazing, not only as a scholar of Tolkien's work, but as just a reader who's interested in Lord of the Rings. I think it's so fun to see Tolkien's development of his story throughout. I also think it's fascinating how Christopher Tolkien has placed some of JRR Tolkien's letters and manuscript pieces throughout the story, so that you get a sense of Tolkien's own mental state and personal development throughout the story. So for example, there's one especially heartbreaking moment later on that's talking about Tolkien right when he was retiring from teaching, and his state of creative, mental, emotional exhaustion. Nobody was wanting to publish the Silmarillion. He was trying to get the Lord of the Rings together and get it in a shape where it could be published, but he was pretty exhausted at that point, and that wasn't even the bulk of his passion. He thought that the Silmarillion and the Lord of the Rings belonged perfectly together as one whole tale. And he could tell that his exhausted state was not going to be conducive to that. He had financial problems as well, so things were not going too well for Tolkien at the end of this. And I think it's incredible how Christopher Tolkien has given us a sense of his father's mental and emotional state alongside these texts, so that you see the parallels between those two things. There's also just some gorgeous moments and passages throughout in Tolkien's typical descriptive and lavish style. So you'll get a lot of views of battle scenes, which is exciting. You'll get some views in general, picturesque views of gates and cities and I really do think he does an amazing job of developing the atmosphere. Even though this is a fragmentary text, you could really envision what's happening in your mind, especially in the portions that he has really expanded and developed. And Alan Lee's illustrations help a lot with that as well. Now, a few things that aren't so great or that require a bit of extra work here, I would say, first of all, as with many of Tolkien's books, it does require quite a bit of prior knowledge. So if you haven't read the Silmarillion yet, I would say get on it, read it, so that you can come back and really enjoy this book. Christopher Tolkien does provide a list of names for Middle-earth. He provides that map that I talked about. I don't think I showed it. It's like a map with some names on it. Here we go, better view. And there's a glossary of what I would consider Old English terms, but just words in general that you might not be familiar with. So there are resources to help you read it, but if you aren't already familiar with the names, it does take a little while to get into the book. Also, as I mentioned before, it is fragmented, and it does not have a real conclusion and an ending. So that is it's not frustrating as much as disappointing that, these things that you wished had happened but never will appear. And as I touched on a little bit earlier, it's not a new story, it's an expanded story. So you might already be familiar with the major elements of the myth of Gondolin, the Fall of Gondolin, and this elven city, and the main characters in it, in which case you might not find this quite as helpful. So it is a beautiful book and really a great resource for finding out more about Tolkien and his mythology, especially for those that already have this knowledge of his world. So that's it for today's review. Thank you so much for listening, and have a great day.